You read your notes, everything looks familiar. You nod along, you feel confident, you feel ready. Then the test comes and your brain goes blank. That is not bad memory. That is not because you did not study enough. That is the rereading illusion, and it is one of the most common traps in learning. Stay with me because what I am about to show you is why rereading feels like progress but builds almost no actual memory, and what actually works instead. Let me ask you something. Have you ever spent hours rereading your notes before an exam, highlighting the important parts again, going over the material multiple times, feeling like you finally have it down? Then you sit for the test, and suddenly nothing comes back. You recognize the questions, you know you studied this, but you cannot pull the answer from your brain. So you leave frustrated, wondering how you forgot everything you just reviewed. If that sounds familiar, here is what happened. You did not forget. You never actually learned it in the first place. Because rereading does not build memory. It builds familiarity. And familiarity feels exactly like knowledge. But it is not the same thing. This is what I call the familiarity trap. Your brain mistakes seeing information again for knowing information. And that mistake costs you. Here is what is happening in your brain when you reread. When you look at your notes for the second or third time, the information feels easier to process. It flows smoother. You recognize the concepts. Everything makes sense, and your brain interprets that ease as a signal. It thinks, I know this, I understand this, I am learning. But that ease is not learning, that is recognition. Recognition is when you see something and think, yes, I have seen this before. This looks familiar, but recognition does not require deep memory. It does not build strong neural pathways. It just means your brain has tagged the information as something it has encountered recently. Dr. Jeffrey Karpik at Purdue University studied this exact problem. He compared students who reread their materials to students who tested themselves on the same materials. Both groups felt equally confident before the exam, but the testing group scored 50% higher. 50%, same material, same time spent. Completely different results. Because rereading creates the illusion of mastery, testing reveals the truth. Here is the first reason rereading fails: passive processing. When you reread, your eyes move across the page. Your brain recognizes the words, but there is no effort. No struggle, no active engagement, and without effort, your brain does not encode information deeply. Think of it like this: when you watch someone else lift weights, your muscles do not grow. When you passively read information, your memory does not strengthen. Learning requires effort, rereading removes it. Neuroscientist Dr. Robert Bjork calls this a desirable difficulty. The harder your brain has to work to retrieve information, the stronger the memory becomes. Rereading is too easy, and easy does not build memory. The second reason rereading fails is no retrieval practice. Memory does not strengthen when you see information again. It strengthens when you pull information out of your brain without any cues. That pulling, that effort to recall, is what builds the neural pathways that make memory stick. When you reread, you are never forcing retrieval. The answer is always right there on the page. Your brain does not have to search for it. It does not have to reconstruct it. It is like checking the answers to math problems instead of solving them yourself. You might understand the solution when you see it, but that does not mean you can solve it on your own. A study from Washington University found that students who practiced retrieval, even if they got answers wrong initially, retained information far longer than students who simply reviewed. Because retrieval is the process that locks memory in place. Rereading just keeps it floating on the surface. The third reason is false confidence. When you reread, the material feels familiar. And familiar feels good. It feels like progress. It feels like you know it, so your brain gives you a confidence boost. You feel ready, you feel prepared, but that confidence is based on recognition, not recall. And recognition is not what the test will ask for. The test will ask you to recall, to produce the answer without seeing it first. And that is a completely different cognitive process. Psychologists call this the fluency illusion. When information flows easily during study, you overestimate how well you will remember it later. Familiar does not mean remembered. Most students do not realize this until it is too late. Until they are sitting in the exam staring at a question they know they studied and realizing they cannot answer it. Only people who test themselves actually remember what they study. If you are serious about learning, subscribe and stop wasting time on methods that do not work. So, what actually works? Here is the system. Method 1. Close the notes and explain from memory. After you read something once, close your notes, do not look at them. Try to explain the concept out loud or write it down from memory. You will get stuck, you will forget parts, that is the point. That struggle is your brain actively building the pathways you need. And when you go back to check what you missed, your brain encodes it deeper because it had to search for it first. If you cannot explain it without looking, you do not know it yet. Method 2. Ask questions, not reread sentences. Instead of passively rereading your notes, turn them into questions. Why does this happen? What causes this? How would I explain this to someone else? What would happen if the opposite were true? Answering questions forces retrieval. It forces your brain to work, and that work is what builds memory. Even spending 2 minutes asking yourself questions is more effective than 20 minutes of rereading. Method 3. Test yourself quickly. Even a simple self-test, even if it is just writing down everything you remember without checking, strengthens memory far more than review. Research from the journal Science showed that testing yourself once produces better long-term retention than studying the same material 7 times. 1 test beats 7 reviews because struggle during study equals strength during recall. The harder it feels now, the easier it will be later. Here is what this looks like in practice. Student rereads their notes 3 times before the exam. They highlight, they review. They feel confident, everything looks familiar. Then the exam comes and they cannot recall the answers. They recognize the questions but cannot produce the information. Student B reads their notes once, then closes them and tries to write down everything from memory. They test themselves repeatedly, they struggle, they make mistakes. But on exam day, they remember because their brain built real pathways, not just familiarity. Student A feels productive while studying but fails when it matters. Student B feels uncomfortable while studying but succeeds when it counts. The difference is not intelligence, it is method, so here is what you need to do. Next time you study, read your notes once, just once, then close them. Try to write down or explain everything you remember. Struggle through it, check only when you are genuinely stuck. Then come back here and comment, did you remember more than you expected? Or did you realize how little actually stuck? Let us test this together. Because most people will watch this, agree with everything, then go right back to rereading and wondering why nothing sticks. Do not be most people. If this changed how you think about studying, share it. Someone you know is still rereading notes and wondering why they keep forgetting. Rereading feels productive because it is easy. Real learning feels harder because it is actually working. Your brain is ready to remember, you just needed the right method. I will see you in the next one.